back with you tonight here on Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405. Your In Focus continues now. Niehaus has responded to the disciplinary charges brought against him by the ANC. The former ANC employee and MKMV, a spokesperson, is charged with contravening 6 counts of the ANC's constitution. Joins us now to talk about this. Carl, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight on In Focus. So 6 counts of contravening the ANC's constitution. Some of them quite, in fact, all of them, one would say, are quite serious to the extent that you would have needed to respond to.
Well, Tabu, I'm not sure how serious those counts are. If one of the counts, in fact, is about an ANC tablecloth that was on the table where I conducted a press conference of Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association, and one understands that it has been the culture of MKMV and of the African National Congress to have our colors and our logos displayed jointly, and at the same time that I was there carrying out the orders of the National Executive Committee of MKMV. So I was not on my own accord there in Kandla, and I certainly did not address that press conference at my own accord. In fact, the person who drafted these charges against had access to a letter that had been written to the National Disciplinary Committee by the late president of MKMV, Comrade Kevin Mapatsu, that spelled out very clearly that I acted on behalf of the National Executive Committee of MKMV, and in fact he commended me for having carried out the instructions of the National Executive Committee of MKMV to the T.
Do you think there's tit-for-tat politics that are ongoing around this particular matter, damaging the image of the ANC in any way? And do you think they'll have certainly an impact in the local government elections? And is really that what you are trying to achieve?
Not at all. And in fact, it is really unfortunate that I was forced to address some of these issues contained in that very flimsy charge sheet that I've received, because there's a bad culture within the African National Congress now that these letters informing comrades that are being disciplined are leaked to the media. You know, Thabo, even before I opened that letter and I read it, I was already aware that that letter had been leaked to certain journalists with a particular spin having been given to it. So it is really only in terms of my own self-protection and defending myself that I decided to address these issues at this stage. Obviously, if everything was equal, and if the African National Congress and its management didn't behave in this strange and underhand fashion, trying to spin a letter of potential discipline against a member and releasing that letter to the media, even before that comrade receives the letter, we wouldn't have had this conversation tonight, and it would have been kept inside the disciplinary procedures of the African National Congress, which of course, quite rightly, it ought to be there. I do not want to damage the chances of the African National Congress in the upcoming local government elections. In fact, I hope the ANC will get a resounding victory. I campaigned for the ANC. And I was very happy that recently my membership was reinstated after a 30-day period of temporary suspension, and immediately when my membership was reinstated, I started campaigning for the African National Congress.
Why do you think then you're being singled out in such a manner? Because that's what you're saying here.
I am being singled out, and I'm being singled out because I'm prepared to tell the truth. Because I'm prepared to say that radical economic transformation is not a separate grouping or a faction within the African National Congress, but that it is the official economic policy program of the ANC. Also because I've said that not all the resolutions of the 54th National Conference of the ANC are being treated equally. In fact, the radical economic transformation resolutions are not being implemented while the stepping aside resolution, which had been redrafted and amended in order to specifically target the Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Ace Magashule, was then pursued and implemented with vigor. Now, these are the truths that I tell. I've also said that President Jacob Zuma had been the victim of political shenanigans in the context of the so-called arms deals case.
Yeah.
That this has been going on for 22 years. Yeah. And there's evidence to that effect. Yeah. Let me, at the last example, give you that I've said that the Truth Commission, the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, was specifically set up in order to target President Jacob Zuma. I didn't say that from the top of my head. Yeah. That was said by the former public protector, Advocate Julie Madonsela. Yeah. She said she specifically wrote that report, the capture of state, in order to target President Jacob Zuma.
But Carl, that's not the position of the ANC. In fact, the ANC supports the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. They think it was a good thing to bring the country to a point of actually understanding what has been happening in the country, or at least what happened in government and at our SOEs that led to the kind of deterioration that we are talking about today. That being said, though, do you believe that President Ramaphosa is behind your charges?
I don't know if President Cyril Ramaphosa personally is behind my charges. What is clear to me is that there is a process of victimization of those who disagree with some of the positions that President Cyril Ramaphosa holds, and definitely a victimization of those who are in favor of radical economic transformation, and those like myself who have called for a thorough investigation into the manner in which money has been used at the 54th National Conference of the ANC to secure the election of President Cyril Ramaphosa and many of the other members of the National Executive Committee. There is selective justice. Yeah. There is selective targeting. Yeah. And this particular set of charges that have been brought against at this particular time, and as I say in my response, there are no coincidences in life, and certainly no coincidences in politics, have got a direct relationship to the targeting of certain comrades, also those who have principled disagreements with the President of the African National Congress.
But do you believe President Ramaphosa is not being held accountable? You're saying he doesn't uphold the most basic elements of this constitution that he's supposed to uphold as the president?
No, he's not being held accountable. If President Cyril Ramaphosa was held accountable, the charges that 9 rank-and-file members of the African National Congress, coming from each of the 9 provinces, had sent to the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, inquiring and insisting that President Ramaphosa should be charged by the National Disciplinary Committee for having contravened the Constitution of the African National Congress through having used millions and millions of rands to influence the outcome of the elections of the 54th National Conference. If he was held accountable, those charges would not have just been pooed out of the way. Yeah. And interestingly enough, Mr. Uriel Abrams, who's the person who formulated the charges against me, decided that those members of the ANC, the most important members of the African National Congress, members of branches, because the ANC is built up out of branches. He said they do not have a standing to bring those serious charges against President Cyril Ramaphosa, charges that are clearly based on the Constitution of the African National Congress, which states that money should not be used to influence elections, to buy votes, and to determine who will be the leadership of the African National Congress.
Yeah. Did the ANC respond to your letter of demand via your lawyers, dated 21st October?
No, they haven't yet responded. And you see, there is a direct relationship. In fact, they have responded in an indirect way by sending me this charge sheet, because it followed a day after we filed that letter of demand. And as I said, there are no coincidences. But the letter of demand is clear. 10 days will follow, and in fact, we're very close to the end of those 10 days. We're approaching that now. And after the 10th day, we will automatically proceed with the process of declaring the African National Congress insolvent and to sequestrate it. The ANC has to prove that it has got the financial means to meet its commitments, not just to myself and to Mr. Comrade McDonald Makabe, but to all its creditors, including also all the staff who suffered so much and who haven't been paid, some of them, for the past 4 months.
Carl Niehaus, appreciate your time and thank you very much for coming through. That is Carl Niehaus there. He is, of course, outlined what he is expecting to have happened at least in the last 10 days, and failing that which, he's going ahead to declare the ANC insolvent. In focus.